The flickering fluorescent lights inside Sonny's diner pulsed like the dying breath of a fading dream, casting a dim glow over the chipped and yellowed countertops that had withstood the wear of time. Ethan Miller wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, balancing 3 plates effortlessly along his arm, like a performer in a show no one was watching. At 28 years old, with a business degree that once brought his mother to tears of pride, Ethan now kept that diploma tucked away like a luxury he could no longer afford. His hands were calloused, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion from endless night shifts. This wasn't the life he had imagined, but life rarely follows the script. These days, Ethan had nothing but a worn apron, a strained smile, and a meager paycheck, just enough to scrape by and cover his mother's cancer treatment. From the kitchen, a harsh bell rang, flat and joyless. "Order up, table 7, Manny the longtime cook called out. The bell, once a cheerful chime, now sounded like the heartbeat of a place slowly losing its soul. "Got it," Ethan replied, adding another plate to his already full arm. He maneuvered through the tight rows of tables, narrowly avoiding Vanessa, a bitter coworker clearing dishes, who made no effort to move aside and deliberately bumped his shoulder as he passed. "Watch it, charity case," she muttered with disdain. "Some of us are here to make real money, not play social worker." Ethan swallowed hard and said nothing. She didn't know, and didn't care to know, that nearly half his paycheck went to his mother's medical bills every week. He'd never told anyone. He wasn't looking for sympathy. "Here you go," Ethan said with a warm smile as he served an elderly couple and their grandson. 1 turkey sandwich with extra mayo, 1 house salad with dressing on the side, and extra napkins for the little artist here. He winked at the boy, who beamed back, his chin smudged with chocolate milk. "Thank you, dear," the grandmother said, taking his hand with a gentle squeeze. "You always remember the little things. You're a blessing to this place." It was moments like these that made the job worth doing, remembering that Mr. Wilson liked exactly 3 ice cubes in his coffee, or that little Jaime only used the blue crayon. These were the small gestures through which Ethan found meaning in a job most would overlook. But the peace didn't last long. The door chime rang. Ray Patel, the assistant manager, emerged from the office like a shark sniffing for blood. His shirt clung to him, sweat visible around the collar. Ray didn't lead with competence. He led through insecurity wrapped in authority. "Miller, Table 4's been waiting 5 minutes for their check. You think people come here to stare at the ceiling?" "Already on it," Ethan replied, handing over the receipt. "And remember, Victor wants the weekly numbers up. No more free refills unless customers spend at least $15.00 each." Victor Chin, the absentee owner, hadn't set foot in the diner since inheriting it 2 years ago. Instead, he sent weekly emails with cost-cutting mandates, shrinking portion sizes, replacing quality ingredients, and chilling what was once a warm, family-style atmosphere. "That policy is driving away our regulars," Ethan said quietly, not wanting to cause a scene. "Mrs. Abernathy has come in for coffee every day for over 10 years. "Well, she can find somewhere else to park her dentures," Ray snapped. Ethan clenched his jaw. There was a time when Sonny's had been a haven, staff like family, customers like neighbors. Now, booths sat empty. Co-workers glared at each other like competitors, and tips barely filled the jar. "Don't let him get to you," murmured Beverly, the hostess in her 60s, as she walked past. "That boy couldn't tell genuine service from a cash register if it bit him on the nose." Her steps were slow but steady, her arthritis no match for her determination. Beverly was the last glowing ember of the old Sonny's, a reminder of better days, a lifeline on the worst ones. The afternoon dragged like a broken clock. Ethan kept moving, his lower back aching, but his smile never faltered. Near 4:30 p.m., the doorbell chimed again. A man in his early 50s walked in. Salt and pepper hair, eyes sharp as a scalpel. His button-down shirt and khakis were modest but clearly expensive. A worn leather bag hung over his shoulder, and his gaze swept the diner with practiced precision. "Table for one," Ethan approached. "Yes, please. Somewhere quiet if possible. I've got some work to catch up on." Ethan led him to a booth near the window where soft light poured in without glare. "This should be perfect. Quiet and comfortable." "Excellent." "Oh, Richard Taylor. Nice to meet you. I'm Ethan. Can I get you something to drink?" "Black coffee, and just call me Richard." As Ethan poured the coffee, Richard began asking light questions about the town, the diner's history, Ethan's time there. Nothing too personal, yet Ethan had the uncanny sense every word he spoke was being catalogued. "What's good here?" Richard asked, flipping through the menu. "Burger's still solid. We grind the beef fresh every morning. The pot roast used to be our signature dish, but lately—" He hesitated, not wanting to badmouth the place. Richard encouraged him with a smile. "It's okay. Be honest." Ethan exhaled. "Burger or Turkey Club is your safest bet." "I'll go with the burger," Richard nodded. Before Ethan could leave, Ray barked across the room. "Miller, clock out after you take his order. Vanessa's coming in early." That would be another $30, 0 cents off his paycheck. Ethan nodded. Understood. He returned with water and a small plate of pickles, one of the few traditions Sonny's had managed to keep. Richard studied him. "You're being sent home early?" Ethan shrugged. "Too many staff, not enough customers." "Funny, you seem like the kind of employee that brings customers back, not drives them away." Ethan blinked, caught off guard. "Thanks. I just try my best, even when things aren't great. My mom always said your work reflects you, not your boss," he added, then quickly changed the subject. "Let me check on your burger." Beverly intercepted him in the hallway. "That man's asking strange questions about the diner, the owner, the staff, and he's writing in a notebook." Ethan looked over. Richard was indeed jotting something down. "Maybe a food critic?" "Food critics don't ask about employee turnover," Beverly replied. The kitchen bell rang. "Miller, your burger's up," Manny shouted. "My masterpiece of the day." Ethan brought the dish out. Richard put away his notebook. "He looks amazing," he said, then looked up with a piercing gaze. "May I ask you one more thing?" "Sure." "If this place were yours, what would you change?" Ethan stood frozen. The question cut like a blade, light but deep. In that moment, his heartbeat changed rhythm, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan wasn't just thinking about surviving. He was thinking about a future, about something that might actually belong to him. "What's the first thing you'd change?" Richard's question hit like lightning from a clear sky, making Ethan pause, his eyes wide in surprise. For a split second he hesitated, but that hesitation quickly gave way to the honesty that had always guided his heart. "If this place were mine," Ethan said, voice quiet but steady, "I'd remember that a restaurant isn't just about food or profit margins. It's about people, both the customers and the staff. Sure, revenue matters, but it shouldn't come at the cost of basic decency." Richard's eyes lit with something Ethan couldn't quite name. Approval, perhaps, or a confirmation of a suspicion already formed. "Interesting perspective, thank you, Ethan." Later, as Ethan removed his apron in the break room and got ready for his night class in accounting, the conversation still lingered in his mind. There was something about Richard Taylor that didn't sit right. Not in a bad way, just different. He didn't act like a traveling businessman grabbing a late lunch, but Ethan was too tired to overthink it. Life was still waiting outside, and so was the fragile hope for a better future. What Ethan didn't know, as he waved goodbye to Beverly and stepped into the fading afternoon light, was that Richard hadn't been taking notes on the food. He'd been taking notes on Ethan, and the next day would bring a test, one unlike anything Ethan had ever faced. A test of character, of compassion, and of whether he would choose what was right over what was easy. The next afternoon, storm clouds gathered over Sonny's diner, thick and dark, promising a downpour. Inside, the air was heavy with tension. Ethan moved through the diner with the precision of someone who knew the routine too well, refilling salt shakers, lining up napkins. Outside, a storm brewed. Inside, a different one, made of fear and uncertainty, was already raging. That morning, Ray had announced that another staff member had been fired. The news left everyone on edge, wondering who might be next. "Miller, you're covering sections 3 and 4 tonight," Ray snapped, eyes glued to his phone. Vanessa had called out again. Ethan didn't need an explanation. Sick usually meant she'd landed a better-paying gig elsewhere. Doubling up meant more tips, but also doubled the work, double the stress, and no extra help. The front door chimed. A woman in her 30s entered, holding the hands of 2 small children. Her clothes were clean but worn. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun, like she hadn't had time for herself in days. The children, a boy around 6 and a girl who looked about 4, stood quietly at her side, nothing like the loud, playful kids who usually bounced through Sonny's. Beverly moved to greet them, but Ray beat her to it, his eyes narrowing as he sized them up. "Table for 3?" the woman asked, her voice soft but full of quiet dignity. "That depends," Ray sneered. "This isn't a charity shelter, you know." The woman flinched slightly but kept her posture straight. "I'm aware. We'd just like to have dinner." "You got money?" Ray asked bluntly. Collar rose in her neck. Not right now, but my kids haven't eaten since this morning and I was hoping—" "Then I'm sorry," Ray cut in coldly. "We don't do handouts here." The boy looked up at his mother, confused and hungry. "Mommy, I thought you said we could get pancakes." The woman knelt, brushing back his hair with trembling fingers. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Not today." "You heard the man," Jeff called out from behind the counter, clearly trying to score points with Ray. "No money, no food. Simple rule." Ethan watched it all unfold, his chest tightening. He glanced over to the corner booth. Richard was there again, his 3rd visit in as many days, laptop open, eyes seemingly on his screen, but clearly listening to every word. "Hey, hold on," Ethan stepped forward. "It's pouring outside. We can't just send them away like this." "Watch me," Ray snorted. "I didn't make the rules, Miller." "Actually," Beverly muttered, "you did. Victor never said to turn away hungry people." Ray's face darkened. "Back off, Bev, unless you want your hours cut too." The woman tightened her grip on her children, ready to leave with what little dignity she had left. "Wait," Ethan said, stepping toward her. Every eye turned toward him. Even Richard closed his laptop, watching intently. "Ray, this is my section. I'll handle it." "There's nothing to handle, Miller. They can't pay." "I know," Ethan said calmly. "I'll cover their bill." Gasps and snickers broke out across the room. Ray laughed. "On your paycheck? That's rich." "I'm not rich," Ethan replied firmly. "But I've got enough." He turned to the woman. "Ma'am, please booth 12. It's quieter back there." She hesitated. "I don't want to cause trouble." "It's no trouble," Ethan reassured her with a soft smile. But they both knew that wasn't entirely true. "I've got crayons for the kids too," he added, kneeling to address the children. "You can draw while you wait." Ray stepped between them. "You think you're a hero, Miller? In this economy, heroes end up broke." Ethan didn't flinch. He looked Ray straight in the eyes. "Then fire me. but I'm not standing by while kids go hungry." Silence fell over the diner. Some customers looked away. Others watched, spellbound, as though this were a scene from a movie. "Fine. Your call," Ray spat, storming back to his office and slamming the door behind him. The rest of the staff turned away, disapproving, avoiding Ethan's eyes. But he didn't care. "This way," Ethan said, guiding the family to their booth. The woman's eyes glistened. "Thank you. I won't forget this. Order anything you'd like. Tonight. You're my guests." As Ethan walked away, Richard gave him a subtle nod, acknowledging what he had just witnessed. Ethan didn't see it. But inside the office, Ray was already on the phone, making a call that would set off a chain of events that would change Ethan Miller's life forever. He's back again. Table 8. Ordered the special and keeps asking about our food suppliers. Manny muttered as Ethan walked by. Ethan glanced toward the corner. Sure enough, Richard Taylor was back, for the third day in a row. It was no coincidence. "Yeah," Ethan smiled. "Looks like he's becoming a regular. At least someone still wants to come back to this place," Manny grumbled, his tone laced with sadness and quiet resignation. "Make Mickey Mouse-shaped pancakes," Manny added. "I'll throw in some extra bacon. Those kids look like they could use the protein." A warm feeling rose in Ethan's chest. "Thanks, Manny. Really?" While waiting for the food, Ethan quietly slipped into the storage area where the day-old bread was kept before being thrown out. He quickly gathered a few rolls, some packets of jam and peanut butter, stuffing them into a small paper bag. This isn't stealing, he told himself. Ray had made it a policy to toss out any leftovers at the end of each day. When no one was watching, Ethan tucked the bag under the counter near booth 12. A small gift for later. The food arrived, and the kids lit up like they'd just struck gold. The Mickey Mouse pancakes, with whipped cream, smiles, strawberry ears, and bacon whiskers, made Tyler's eyes go wide with excitement. "These are the best pancakes ever," the boy shouted, loud enough for nearby diners to smile. Sarah's pot roast was served with an extra-large helping of vegetables and potatoes. "This is too much," she whispered, her eyes a mix of gratitude and embarrassment. "Enjoy it," Ethan replied softly. "Everyone deserves a proper meal." From his corner booth, Richard gave Ethan a subtle nod, signaling him over. "What you did was really kind," he said in a quiet, sincere voice. "Anyone would have done the same," Ethan replied, slightly awkward. "No," Richard said, shaking his head, his gaze sharper than before. "They wouldn't. I've been watching, and you're not like most people I've met." Ethan hesitated. "Are you with corporate?" Richard only gave a cryptic smile. "I'm just someone who observes human nature. Genuine kindness is rare these days." Before Ethan could respond, the kitchen bell rang. He returned to the flow of his shift, clearing plates, refilling drinks, keeping a constant watch over Sarah and her kids. When no one was looking, he topped off Tyler's milk and added more pot roast to Sarah's plate. "Chef made too much," he said with a wink that made her eyes shimmer. Before walking by again, Ethan quietly slid the paper bag onto the seat beside Sarah. "Later," he murmured. "Day-old stuff we usually toss anyway." Her fingers briefly touched his, a silent thank you. The peaceful moment shattered as Ray stormed out of the office, eyes blazing when he saw the elaborate pancakes and the heaping pot roast. "What the hell is this?" he barked, Miller front and center. Ethan approached, standing protectively between Ray and the small family. "Is there a problem?" "Of course there's a problem. Who authorized deluxe meals like this? This is way over what a basic comp meal should be." "I paid for it. It doesn't affect the bottom line." Ray's voice dropped to a venomous hiss. "This is a direct violation of policy. You're undermining my authority in front of the entire staff." "It's not charity," Ethan replied firmly. "It's my money, my choice. No, it's my diner, my rules." while Victor's away. Ray turned towards Sarah, pointing straight at her face. And you finish up and get out. We don't need your kind giving this place a bad image. The room went still. A few diners looked up, stunned. Richard calmly set his fork down, his expression unreadable, like the calm before a storm. "My kind?" Sarah said, voice trembling but dignified. "You mean a mother with hungry children?" Ray's face flushed with rage. "This is going in your file, Miller. One more stunt like this and you're out." Ethan froze. This job paid for his mother's medication. It funded his night classes. Without it, everything could collapse. But looking into those kids' eyes, he had no regrets. "You do what you need to do," he said quietly. "I'll do the same." Ray turned on his heel and slammed the office door. Beverly walked past and gently squeezed Ethan's arm, a silent gesture of support. In the corner, Richard took out his phone, his eyes locked on Ethan as he made a brief, quiet call. The next morning, Ethan walked into the diner feeling like he had a boulder on his chest. He hadn't slept. His mother's next prescription refill was due next week. If he got fired today, it was over. "Good morning, Beverly," he said softly. "Even something's up," she replied in a hushed voice. "Ray called an all-staff meeting at 9 a.m. Even the night shift has to be here." A chill crept down Ethan's spine. "So, this is it. Public execution." "No matter what happens," Beverly said gently, "you did the right thing yesterday. That's worth more than this job." Ethan nodded, though they both knew it wasn't that simple. Jobs were hard to come by in a small town like this. The break room was packed when Ethan walked in. All 16 employees crammed into a space meant for 10. Ray stood at the front, looking more nervous than usual. Jeff and Vanessa whispered to each other, casting smug glances in Ethan's direction. "What's going on?" Ethan whispered to Manny. "No clue." But a few suits went into the office around 7. Before he could say more, the door opened. 3 people entered, a stern-looking woman in a sharp pantsuit, a younger man with a tablet in hand, and finally, Ethan's breath caught, Richard Taylor. But he wasn't the new customer today. He wore a tailored charcoal suit with a gold sun lapel pin, Sunrise Hospitality Group's logo, the parent company of Sonny's and 27 other restaurants. "Good morning," Richard said, his voice now carrying undeniable authority. "I'm Richard Taylor, Executive Vice President of Operations for Sunrise Hospitality Group." The room fell into stunned silence. Even Ray took a step back, visibly pale. "For the past 3 days, I've been conducting a covert evaluation of this location," Richard continued. "Sonny's was once the flagship diner of our entire chain. My father-in-law's inspiration for building this company 30 years ago." Ethan's mind reeled. Richard Chin's brother-in-law. "Yes," Richard said as if reading his thoughts. "I'm Victor Chin's brother-in-law, and I'm deeply concerned about what I've seen here." He gestured to the others. "This is Lydia Mercer, our regional director, and James Wong, our head of human resources. We're here because what was once our top-performing location has fallen to the bottom, not just in revenue but in customer satisfaction and employee morale." Ray stepped forward, contorting his face into a forced smile. "Mr. Taylor, if I had known who you were, you would have treated me differently," Richard cut in, his voice calm but sharp as a blade. "Put on a show of being a competent manager instead of playing mobile games for 3 straight hours in your office yesterday." Ray was speechless, his face draining of all color. "During my time here, I wasn't just evaluating performance, I was evaluating character." The office door opened again. Sarah entered, her hair neatly tied, wearing a crisp business dress and carrying a leather briefcase. Behind her were Tyler and Emma, clean, well-groomed, and visibly a bit nervous. "Many of you may recognize Sarah Williams, my executive assistant," Richard announced. "They were part of the test." The room erupted in whispers. Sarah posed as a struggling mother, unable to afford food for her children. The purpose of the scenario was to evaluate how staff respond to moral challenges not found in any employee handbook. Richard scanned the room. His gaze landed on Ethan. There was one person in this diner who displayed compassion and integrity well beyond expectations. One person who paid for someone's meal out of his own pocket, who brought extra food and who treated them with dignity, even knowing it could cost him his job. The room fell silent. Ray's face went from pale to ashen gray. "Sir," Ray stammered, "I was just following company policy regarding non-paying customers." "That policy does not exist," Lydia Mercer cut in, her voice icy. Sunrise Hospitality Group has always maintained a Good Neighbor Fund at each location for exactly these types of humanitarian situations. And according to financial records, added James Wong, eyes still locked on his tablet, that fund was reallocated to general operating expenses over the past 8 months. Richard stepped forward, extending his hand toward Ethan. "Mr. Miller, I want to personally thank you for embodying the core values this company was built upon." Ethan shook his hand, still dazed as if waking from a dream. "I only did what anyone should do." "But they didn't," Richard replied, glancing around the room. "And that's the problem." He turned back to the group, his tone clear and unwavering. "Based on the findings of our evaluation, we are making immediate changes. Ray Patel, your employment is terminated, effective immediately. James will escort you to collect your things." A heavy silence fell. Jeff stared at the floor. Vanessa burst into tears. "Over the next 2 days," Richard continued, "we'll be conducting individual interviews with each staff member. Some of you will be offered transfers to other locations. Others will be let go." Sarah stepped forward. She still looked every bit the professional, but her voice softened as she looked directly at Ethan. "I'm sorry for the deception," she said sincerely. "But I also want to thank you. My kids haven't stopped talking about you, the nicest server we've ever met." She smiled. "Your Mickey Mouse pancakes were a huge hit." Tyler nodded eagerly. "They were amazing. Mom said yesterday was pretend, but I want to come back for real ones." Emma chimed in. "I kept the crayons you gave me. Mom said we were just pretending to be hungry, but you were so nice, I didn't have to pretend to like you." Her innocent comment broke the tension. Laughter rippled through the room, cutting through the heaviness. Richard allowed himself a small smile before his tone shifted again. "Ethan, would you join us in the office? We have something important to discuss." As Ethan followed Richard toward Victor's office, he caught Beverly's eye. Her cheeks were damp with tears as she gave him a proud thumbs up. Manny offered a single nod, simple but full of weight. Ethan realized he had just passed a test he hadn't even known he was taking, and maybe the most important one of his life. In Victor Chen's office felt like a completely different world from the rest of the diner. The last time Ethan had stepped inside was 5 years ago, during his first week on the job. Back then, the room held family photos and comfy chairs. Now, it was all revenue charts and sterile, minimalist furniture. Only the view of Main Street through the window remained unchanged. "Do you know why this place is called Sonny's?" Richard asked as the three of them sat down. Ethan shook his head. "Sonny was Victor's mother," Richard replied. "She started this diner as a fusion restaurant, American classics with a Chinese twist. People laughed at her, but she believed good food and genuine kindness would always win." Richard smiled wistfully. She was right, and that spirit became the heart of this restaurant chain. "What happened?" Ethan asked. "Growth, expansion, and then Victor took over after his father retired," Richard sighed. "We lost sight of what made this place special." Lydia slid a folder across the table toward Ethan. Inside was his personnel file, customer feedback, performance reviews, and Richard's own notes from the past 3 days. "We've been watching you longer than you think," Lydia said. Beverly and Manny have been submitting quarterly reports to headquarters for over a year. Every single one mentions that, despite the chaos, you've remained a pillar of consistency. And your name came up in every single report, Richard added. Ethan sat still, stunned. The subtle hints, Beverly's secretive phone calls, Manny's quiet observations, it all made sense now. Ethan, we'd like to promote you to assistant manager. Effective immediately, Richard said, and assuming all goes well, we'd like to consider you for general manager in 6 months. Ethan blinked in disbelief. Lydia slid over a formal offer letter, with a salary that made his heart race. Benefits started immediately. Health insurance, tuition assistance, a future he'd barely dared to imagine. I'm not qualified, Ethan stammered. I'm still taking business classes part-time. I've never actually managed anything. But you've been managing this place unofficially for months, Richard countered. Beverly and Manny confirmed it. You've been doing the schedule, handling complaints, managing inventory, all while Ray took the credit. And Ethan knew it was true. We need people like you, Richard continued. People who understand that a restaurant isn't just about profits, it's about people. That's exactly what you told me. Aided. Ethan was quiet. I remember. So, do you accept? Ethan stood, walking slowly to the window, staring out at the street below. Sonny's had been his refuge after his father's death, when he dropped out of college to care for his mother. What began as a temporary job had become his anchor during the hardest years of his life. I've never seen myself as a leader. The best leaders rarely think of themselves that way, Richard replied. They just see what needs to be done and do it. But Ethan still hesitated. He was afraid. Afraid he might turn into someone like Ray. Afraid that power might change him. And afraid of how others would react. Resentment, suspicion. They'll think I knew all along, he said quietly. Some might, Lydia acknowledged with a nod. But leadership isn't about being liked. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard. At that moment, the door opened gently. Beverly stepped in. Sorry to interrupt, but you should know this. Jeff and Carlos are spreading rumors that Ethan was in on it, that this whole thing was staged. Richard closed his eyes with a sigh. I figured as much. Lydia, please take care of it. As Lydia left, Beverly turned to Ethan with a look full of quiet faith. They're scared, sweetheart. Change always makes people nervous, but you know what's right. You just need to give yourself permission to believe in it. She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. Oh, and that phone call last month, when my arthritis was acting up and you took over, that was Sunny Chin. She's the one who recommended we take a closer look at you. The door closed behind her. Richard looked at Ethan. The position is yours, if you want it. But I need your answer today. We're planning a complete restructuring, and I need to know, are you willing to lead it? Ethan sat back down, fingers tapping softly on the armrest. The number in that offer letter could change his life. His mother would get the medication she needed. He could afford school again. And maybe, just maybe, he'd live in an apartment with working heat this winter. But if I take this, he said slowly, I want to do it the right way. No shortcuts. No sacrificing quality. No treating staff like they're disposable. Richard nodded. That's exactly why we're offering it to you. The question is, are you ready? Ethan looked up, his eyes steady. I'll do it, not for the money or the title, but because Sonny's deserves better. The customers deserve better, and so do the employees. Richard's face broke into a genuine smile as he extended his hand. Welcome aboard, Assistant Manager Miller. And from that moment on, a brand new chapter began, not just for Ethan, but for Sonny's Diner as well. The next few weeks unfolded like a whirlwind of change. Ray's desk was cleared out. His toxic, heavy-handed presence quickly faded into distant memory. Jeff, Vanessa, and two other staff who had failed the character test were let go. Now, as a manager, Ethan personally interviewed and hired new faces, people who brought real heart and energy to the team. His first official act, restoring Sunny's original menu, including the unique Chinese-American fusion dishes created by Sunny herself. Dishes that had once been cut for being too costly were now back, not just as food, but as a revival of the diner's soul. His second act, restarting the staff meal program, ensuring no one worked a shift on an empty stomach. "You're cutting into the profit margin," warned the new accountant sent by Sunrise. "No," Ethan replied firmly. "I'm investing. Hungry employees don't give good service, but happy ones do." Not everyone welcomed the change. Some remaining staff looked at Ethan with lingering doubt, wondering if he would become just another Ray. Carlos, the cook who had once been close to Jeff, made his displeasure clear. "Look at the new boss man," he muttered one afternoon as Ethan walked into the kitchen. "Forgot where he came from already?" But instead of pushing back or asserting his authority, Ethan simply put on an apron and stepped up beside him. "Actually, I could use your help," he said. "I'm trying to recreate Sunny's original sweet and sour sauce, but something's missing. You've been here longer than I have. Do you remember anything that might be the key?" One simple request. A show of respect, and the ice began to melt. By the end of the shift, not only had they perfected the signature sauce, but they had also started brainstorming new menu improvements. One launched later, Ethan launched his boldest initiative yet, the Community Table Project. Once a week, Sunny's opened its doors to anyone in need, serving warm, dignified meals in partnership with local charities and food banks. The program was partially funded by Sunrise Hospitality and partially by a voluntary roundup option on customer receipts. "We're not just selling food," Ethan explained during a staff meeting. "We're building community." That had always been Sunny's founding spirit, and now it was thriving again. Beverly, who had been a quiet pillar of support, beamed with pride. "It's been years since this place felt like the old Sunny's," she said. "You're making a real difference, honey." As the seasons changed, so did the heart of the town. Long-lost regulars began returning. New faces walked in, drawn by the growing buzz about a diner that served warmth along with its meals. Staff who had once been guarded were now united, gathered under Ethan's leadership, firm but fair, consistent yet compassionate. 6 months after that fateful day, the day Ethan stood up for a struggling mother and her children, he stood behind the counter on a bustling Saturday morning. Every booth was filled. The air buzzed with laughter, conversation, and the rich scent of breakfast. In the kitchen, Manny led his team with renewed joy. Beverly, arthritis and all, moved gracefully between tables, greeting customers by name and charming the newcomers. The bell above the door rang. Ethan looked up and froze. Richard Taylor stepped inside, accompanied by an elegant older woman, someone Ethan instantly recognized from the photo now hanging again on the office wall. Sunny herself, the founder. "Good morning," Ethan greeted them, suddenly nervous. "Welcome to Sunny's." Sunny's sharp eyes swept the room, from the spotless counters to the fresh flowers on each table, and the genuine smiles of every staff member. She nodded slowly, her expression full of quiet approval. "You've done well," she said simply. "My son may have forgotten what mattered, but you remembered it for him." Richard gestured toward the office. "Let's talk in private. We have something important to discuss." Inside the office now, Richard placed a folder on the desk. "The numbers speak for themselves," he said. "Revenue is up 32%. Staff turnover is nearly zero. Customer satisfaction is the highest in the chain." "But," Ethan said hesitantly, "it's not just about the numbers." "Exactly," Sunny interjected. "It was never just about the numbers. That's why we're here, Richard continued. Ethan, we're expanding the community table model to all 28 Sonny's locations, and we want you to oversee the project as our new Director of Community Engagement. Director? Ethan echoed, stunned. You'd be based at headquarters, Richard explained. You'll travel to each location, train the management teams, and ensure the program holds true to its original mission and spirit. Penny leaned in slightly. We need someone who understands that business success and human compassion aren't opposites. They complement each other. Someone who leads through action, not just words. Ethan was speechless. From server to executive director in just 6 months? What about this Sonny's? He asked. Who will manage it? We were hoping you'd make that recommendation, Richard replied. Someone who shares your values and understands what Sonny's really stands for. Ethan looked out the office window. Beverly was patiently training a new hostess. Manny was laughing with Carlos, who, once his strongest critic, was now showing a young girl how to twist a straw wrapper into a flower. They weren't just co-workers anymore. They were family. I know exactly the right person, Ethan said. And in that moment, the future no longer felt distant or uncertain. It felt real and full of hope. As the three of them stepped out of the office to share the good news with the staff, Ethan spotted a young woman entering the diner, holding the hands of 2 small children. Their faces were marked by hunger and quiet confusion, a reflection of a moment Ethan knew all too well. Without hesitation, he stepped forward, his familiar smile already forming. Welcome to Sonny's, he said warmly. Let me get you a table. I'll make sure your family has the best seat in the house. Because some lessons, once etched into your heart, never fade. And sometimes a single act of kindness, seemingly small, can change not just a life, but an entire culture. That was Ethan's legacy, and his journey was only just beginning.